Okay, Brent,
Okay, Josh.
this is Speak Now or Whatever.
Our guests are Johnathon Ford and David Swatzell of Unwed Sailor. Johnathon's reverberating bass notes have been heard through the likes of bands such as Pedro the Lion, Roadside Monument, and his almost 30-year musical career as Unwed Sailor. And with him is our friend David Swatzell, who we've had the pleasure of knowing for many years with his previous local bands, including Last Flight In, Comrade Engineer, and Ray. Their latest album is called Underwater Over There, which was released back in May of 2024.
Yes. When's the first time you heard Unwed Sailor?
Had to have been probably at one of the original Furnace Fest.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, when Johnathon played. I'm not sure if it actually happened when he was also playing bass in Pedro, because I saw Pedro play
Okay.
at one of the original Furnace Fest, and
Yeah.
Johnathon was playing bass.
Got it.
So I'm not really sure.
Man. But they make excellent music.
Yes.
And it was really cool to talk to him and David, Johnathon and David, about their process, how they record, how they write. We can hear in their music progressions from album to album, project to project, and you can hear like elements of The Cure, elements of New Order, and then in their most recent stuff with Underwater Over There, you can hear all of this like coming to fruition, and you can hear them evolving as a band. I mean, together. And so it was just really great to hear Johnathon and David talk to us about what it means to play live, what it means to create the music, and what their plans are for the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is our interview with Unwed Sailor.
For sure. Awesome. Well, cool. Well, Johnathon, David, thank you guys so much for being here, man.
Absolutely.
We have been trying to make this happen for a little while now. You guys have been brought up multiple times, especially with like Jeff when we did our first interview with him. So happy to have you guys. Always been a big fan for
Big
years.
fans.
So glad to have you guys. I think the first time I ever saw Unwed Sailor was actually at Bottle Tree. Who was in that band at that time?
What year?
That would have been early 2000s.
Yeah, I worked that show, and I think that's how essentially I wound up getting in Unwed Sailor. Which
Okay.
I was bartending, and me and Johnathon were just talking before the show, and he was in another band called Native Lights that Ray, my band at the time, went on tour with, and it kind of all came out of that meeting at that Bottle Tree show. And then, on that tour, he had asked me like, hey, I might be wanting another guitar player for Unwed. Would you be interested? And that's kind of how that all came about, because I was bartending that Bottle Tree show with Unwed. But, I don't know who was in the band. I know probably Hank was in the band at that point. I'm not sure who else.
That's very possible. I've lost track over the years, honestly. The only two Unwed eras that I know for sure are the current era with Dave and Matt and Patrick, and then the Nick Say, Matt Putman era. Those are the ones that I know for sure. In between is kind of a blur because there were just so many people.
Yeah.
That kind of came in and out,
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And so, we kind of have associated you as being the forerunner for sure of Unwed Sailor, coming from, Pedro the Lion, Roadside Monument, it's interesting because there's a whole spread of musicians and bands that we grew up listening to that have kind of developed into other bands. And so it's really cool to see that Unwed Sailor has actually continued for almost 30 years. Is that right?
It's getting close to 30. Yeah, I believe it's maybe 27 this year.
Okay, yeah.
Cool.
Since 1998, so whatever that is.
Wow.
That was your first EP, the Firecracker thing?
Yes, and it came out in '99, I think, but the band started in '98. That's when I started writing the songs, and uh, kind of. I think that's when the name came about. No, wait, the name came about actually before I ever started it, um, which would have been '97, I think, is when I got the name, and
So-
then the music started in '98.
Cool. So the name comes from me being totally ignorant about this. The name comes from where?
Well, are you familiar with the band Frodis?
Yes.
Well, Jason Hamaker and Shelby Sinka from that band, I went on tour with them. Well, my old band Roadside Monument did shows with them, and Roadside wasn't able to do the entire tour, so I just went ahead and went out with Frodis for like a month or something. And it's just a wild tour, and somehow I got nicknamed Unwed Sailor by Jason.
That's awesome.
And it was just kind of this joke. I don't even know why they called me that, but
You didn't do anything to warrant that nickname?
Maybe I did. I don't know, but they would be like, "Ah, here comes the Unwed Sailor." They'd say things like that, and I mean, they're just really funny dudes. I mean, it's just a wild time. It's like being on tour with them is kind of like a modern day reality show or something. It was just nonstop adventure insanity. So yeah, they just called me that. And then whenever in '98, when I started coming up with those bass lines for Firecracker and Ruby's Wishes, and it kind of was like a no-brainer. It's like, well, this just sounds like Unwed Sailor to me.
Right.
So that's that. Yeah, that's how it started.
That's so cool.
That's awesome. So when I try to explain Unwed Sailor and the sound to which you guys have, like I can only think about like a couple bands that had this, kind of heavy bass thumping sound, such as like Hum or Mineral. And so like I kind of have always kind of equated you guys with that, but also with like maybe this this kind of more delicate sound. How would you guys describe Unwed Sailor? Like
Very diverse, I would say,
Yeah.
in influences,
A lot of
because
influence
you
going on. Yeah.
right. I mean, because you just said Hum and Mineral, and that would have never crossed my mind. So
Way to go, Brent.
I feel like, I mean, I'm sure Dave like has like 100 different bands he would think of with Unwed Sailor. Um, because he saw the band and wasn't in the band, and now he's in the band. So he probably has a whole other spectrum of what he would say it sounds like or influences. And I mean, there's definitely, for me, um there's when it first started, like Tortoise was huge for me, especially the first self-titled album, kind of all those Chicago like Tortoise projects. This band Pullman was huge for me. Directions in Music, which was another band from that whole group of people. Um, I mean, Pedro the Lion, even. Uh, you know, Coming out of Pedro and playing with Dave, I learned so much, and I was a huge fan and still am of Pedro the Lion. So his songwriting was a big influence. Um, there was this band from San Diego called Physics, uh, and I was on tour with Pedro the Lion, and we played with them in San Diego, and that was a huge eye opener for me. They were an instrumental band, and I had never I'd never seen an instrumental band before. So when I saw them, I was like, "Whoa! Like you can do that?" Yeah, you know what I mean? It was just you can be like this indie rock band and get up there and you know play instrumental music. So that was a huge influence on me too. So I think it started out as that, and then it just after Firecracker, it's just like the doors just blew open. I kind of just realized that everything was an influence. Everything that crossed my path or I discovered musically kind of became an influence. Um, and now we just have this huge like pot that we just pull out of. I mean, it's like there's no like barriers anymore. We have a new record coming out in May, and that's, I mean, anything from the Police to the thrash band Tourniquet, uh, Unsane. I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Like the stuff now, we just kind of open our minds, and there's like no rules. We just whatever influence has been in there for a week to 40 years, we just pull it out and like let it happen.
And I think that's what's great, because like for a band to survive as long as you guys have, or as you have, has been influential because it's not stuck to one genre. It's just constantly moving, and it's great. And, my comparisons were definitely of like earlier year stuff. Like Faithful Anchor is probably one of my favorite albums. And it's like very, just kind of thumping sound, but, it's fantastic. But that's good to hear, like a lot of those types of influences and stuff. So,
Yeah, it's just been
That's interesting.
Yeah,
go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say it's interesting for us because we don't fit in a box, and so we go to these. We might play like we played Post Fest last year, and I feel like a lot of people want to be, they're a post rock band and expect the big like crashing cymbals and just all the big like builds and stuff that you hear with all these like quote post rock bands, but it's just like we're not adhering to any of that, and we're just kind of just whatever we're listening to. I mean, we have our root influences that we grew up listening to when we were learning to play. Like, Jonathan's like Peter Hook, and for me, it's like Johnny Marr, and like even like Jason Martin from Starflyer 59, people like that. And that comes out always, I feel like, but it might just we might have been listening to like the new Phil Collins record all month, and then now we're doing, adding something we got from that in the new song, or, something that's in the back of our head. But it's interesting for us because it's like not fitting into that box, just talking about like who we sound like and stuff has always been an interesting thing for us. I feel like, blessing and a curse in a way, but who wants to fit into a box anymore? So.
exactly.
Yeah, the curse is like a lot of times people just don't know what to do with us.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like we're not like we're buddies with This Will Destroy You, and we're friends with Maserati, and stuff, but it's like, where do we fit in that instrumental world? I mean, we have heavy moments for sure, but like Dave said, then there's other moments where it's like, wait, is that off the Tarzan soundtrack by Phil Collins? You know what I mean? It's just like
Guys keep talking about Phil Collins.
Oh,
he's like a thing in this band. Huh?
He's a legend. Absolutely. As a drummer, a songwriter, a singer.
Sure.
I'm a huge fan.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's, but at the same time, we're not trying to be that way. It's just, that's just what we do. That, I think if we ever tried to like, write a song with like hints of Phil Collins and hints of Tourniquet, and I mean, there's no way we could do it.
Sure. Yeah.
That's just what naturally is happening. So we go with it. So yeah, I mean, that's just how we make this work.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I do have a question. So you are originally from Tulsa. You live there now?
Yes, I grew up here, and then I'm back here.
Okay. So
I live here now. Yes.
So what made you transplant from Tulsa to Seattle? Because that's where Unwed started, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just growing up here and having zero culture.
Yeah.
There was just nothing for me here. I mean, I had I had a handful of really cool friends that were into music too, and we started some bands here, um, which was a great starting point. You know, I kind of got to cut my teeth and in a garage and play all the wrong notes and you know just how you start playing, but there was no scene, there was no inspiration really.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this was early 90s, so the grunge explosion had just happened. um, so you know for a 21 year old guy, like the oh well, it's obvious, you just go to the Pacific Northwest and that's where all the influences and culture is going to be. So I actually moved to Portland originally, um, and was there, and just I couldn't find a place to live. Like I was living in like this random like condo with all these girls, and that's not what I was looking for. I wasn't going to find, there was no real musical inspiration there, you know, unless I sing on a couch with an acoustic serenading them or something, you know, like
That sounds awesome.
ridiculous.
I don't know what
Yeah.
what she's talking about, but
They weren't into the tourniquet Phil Collins thing, so it didn't
Oh
work out.
man,
Yeah.
it's their loss.
So yeah, so from there I had some friends in Long Beach. So I went down to Long Beach and I was finding inspiration there. Like I was playing music with some people a little bit and seeing cool shows, which was another huge plus. But it just didn't feel right. And then I was friends with Matt Johnson, who at that time was playing in Blenderhead, and Don't Know. Uh, and I don't even, I guess I called him or wrote him a letter or something. I can't remember how that I got a hold of him,
Mm.
but I just told him I was trying to find some place to go. And he was like, "Well, why don't you just come to Seattle and you can just sleep on our couch? We have a house in the U District and like 13 people live here or something. You can just live on the couch." I was like, "This sounds awesome. Let's do it." So I don't even remember how I got there. um, but once I got there, literally the first day, I knew like this is it. Like
Mm.
this is where I was supposed to be, because it was just there were so many people that were into the same stuff I was. Um, you know, culturally, Seattle at that time was just insane. Like the music scene and uh, was just, you know, everything was happening all the time. And I don't remember the exact time how long I was there, but I mean, it had to have been within a month. I was already like playing music with people and being in bands and um like the house I lived in it was called the House of Funk, was just like a hotbed for shows.
Mm.
Like I remember within the first couple weeks I was there, 2 or 3 weeks, there was a house show, um, and Jeremy Enoch was playing acoustic in my living room. And then there was this band Coolidge. It was their last show ever.
Mm.
And I'm just like sitting on the couch that I sleep on. And like right there is like Jeremy Enoch and Coolidge and all these bands that I love. So so yeah, I mean it was just like, okay, this is it. This is my spot. And then from there, you know, I went into the roadside monument world, and
Mm.
which happened really naturally. The Pedro the Lion world.
Mhm. Now,
So yeah,
did Jeff
oh,
live
go
in
ahead.
this house as well?
Jeff didn't live in that house, but he lived in the third house I lived in.
Gotcha.
That was called Slumyani.
He gave us the name of it. And I couldn't
Yeah, I
remember what it
can't remember
was.
that
But
either.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah. That Slumyani was pretty fun. It was me, Jeff, Doug Lorig, who played in Roadside, John Spalding,
Mhm,
who played in 90 Pound Bliss.
mhm.
So it was all of us in like a 2-bedroom apartment. And yeah, that was, and we lived right behind Trading Musician, that iconic uh music store in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
So which was where I bought my first bass there. So
Nice.
Cool.
yeah, it was fun. It
That's
was fun.
awesome.
Nice.
Oh.
So, full disclosure here, I have known David for over 20 years. We've
Oh,
known
wow.
each other for over 20 years.
Yep.
So, I have to ask, because I've been dying to know, I think you mentioned the Bottle Tree show, right? Them playing a Bottle Tree. You were aware of them before Bottle Tree?
Yeah, I mean, I was a Roadside Monument fan back in the day.
Yeah.
I was always, I was a tooth and nail kid or whatever. So I love Roadside, and then I got the Firecracker EP when it came out, and actually, I think the first time I talked to Johnathon was at Furnace Fest, whatever year that was when Unwed played, like 2001 or 2 or something. Just in the merch mall area,
Right.
like just being like, oh yeah, I love Roadside. And then it was later when they came, and I was bartending at Bottle Tree, and whenever that was, late aughts or something, early teens, that we got to talking about music, and then we went on tour. Native Light's this other band, and my band Ray went on tour, and then he had asked me on that tour to potentially play with Unwed, and I flew out to Tulsa, and we jammed on some stuff and wound up writing like a couple of the songs on the first record, I'm on Heavy Age, like that day when I was there jamming, and been doing it ever since.
That's awesome.
Great.
I have this funny story of Tim from Qualifier telling me that he was like, I was told that there was a 13-year-old kid playing a guitar like no other. And I was like, well, who was it? He was like, it was David. And I was like, what? What? So you've been shredding for years, evidently,
Always.
right?
I started pretty young, playing in bands around town. I've always been like the youngest guy in the band. Except now our drummer Patrick I think Unwed, we're all 10 years apart. I think Patrick's like 27, 28, I'm 38.
Whoa.
We're like,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. So now I'm not the youngest, but generally I've always been the youngest in the band. That guy that's, literally, I think, like, you might have even driven me to the first Furnace Fest. Like, I know somebody from our hometown.
I drove you places.
Yeah, drove me all over the place, drove me to practice.
I know Courtney did. She brings it up.
Yeah.
But I just started very young. I was lucky to have supportive parents that let me go to crazy, hardcore shows and stuff. And so,
So cool.
Nice.
So I'm very interested because we haven't talked to a lot of instrumental bands, bands that are just strictly instrumental. I'm very interested for the both of you, the process or the enjoyment you get from the studio, crafting something. And like we talked about a little bit earlier about just it being organic and like figuring it out right there and putting it down. The process between recording and being in the studio versus playing the stuff live. Like, what do you get out of each one?
Well, with recording, for instance, I'm working on some new songs right now for a future record, and I've got if I have an idea, I'll record it on my phone, and now mostly I record it on my phone as a video because I found there's been times when I'll do audio and I'll forget like exactly where I was, so I do it with video. So I've written the songs, like all the bass part structures for these songs, and I've recorded them on video, and then I get really lazy. Like I don't want to go over to my computer and actually truly demo them. Because once I commit to that, then I have to write like lead lines over it and stuff like that. So it's honestly, sometimes it feels like a chore to me. And there'll be days and days and days go by where all I'll think about is I need to go over to that computer and truly demo these, and I'll lose sleep over it. Like I just, so that part is kind of a chore to me, like the actual giving, like the first birth, I guess, it's just
Right.
like, but once that's done, I feel super relieved that they're there. They're like the skeletons waiting for, the skin and
Mm.
the eyes and the ears and the hair. Um, and so yeah, and so from there we begin the process of creating the song. So that I don't really like that part. I mean, it's crucial because that's how something is born.
Hmm.
But for me, I do like whenever Dave and I get in the studio and Matt and I get in the studio, because then I have the excitement of like Christmas morning, because I go in and I have these bass structures and everything, and then I get to see Dave start putting the hair on the song, and
Hmm.
then Matt starts putting the feet on. So you kind of see the creation of what these songs are going to be, and I love that. That's probably my favorite part of playing music.
Mm.
Because I mean, because you're seeing something just created out of the air,
Right.
and it's that age old mystery. Like everyone's like, "Oh, where does a song come from?" And it's experiencing that. You're literally creating this brand new thing that's never existed. So that I love that so much. I mean, that's just all. I'll be in the studio just jumping up and down and like laughing, and because there's just moments where it's so ridiculous. Like on the new record, there's like a section of the song that is just straight up The Police, Every Breath You Take.
Hmm.
And I just remember like Dave was playing the part, and I was just laughing and jumping up and down and like almost crying, because as a kid, grew up listening to that song,
Hmm.
and it always just was such a deep introspective song to me. Like it really hit me even as a kid. And so to hear a song that we were creating, that I was hearing like I heard Every Breath You Take as a kid. I mean, that's like it's like it touches your soul.
Right.
So I love that. I love that part of it. Um, and then we reached the climax there. We've created these songs on this record. And then it goes back to the next giving birth, which is, oh, we've got to like practice, we've got to rehearse,
Hmm.
these songs to play live. And I do not like rehearsing. Like once we get in, like we'll get into like practice, and pretty much every time we'll like run through the set, and I'm like, I don't know, do we have to run through this again? What I mean? I just don't want to do it. I get so lazy about it. But once we do run through the set again and we get it's all locked in, and then we're out there playing the shows, then that's that there we are again.
Right.
It's that magic and that mystical element of being on stage in this loud volume, hearing the things that you created. Here, like basically you're experiencing that every breath you take uh moment you had, but with like 10 times the volume on stage in front
Mm.
of people,
Sure.
with lights and feeling the speakers and feel.
Yeah.
So it's like work to get to those euphoria moments. uh but it's worth it.
That's awesome.
It's worth it.
I love that.
Yeah. What would you add to that, Dave, about playing
Yeah,
versus studio recording?
yeah. Well, it's a lot of the way we approach it. A lot of times we don't know what the song is going to be. Like he'll send me a bass demo, and then I'll listen to it and I'll have like some ideas pop in my head for guitar stuff, and then he'll eventually send me him and Matt doing the rhythm section, and then I'll be still thinking about stuff. But then I'll have like a riff or two, or like something, a verse part or whatever in my head or that I've worked out. But I get to the studio and then we just start fleshing it out, and I'll just start playing stuff and it just starts taking shape. And so it's amazing just seeing something, like he was saying, take shape, and you had no clue how it was going to happen. and you just see it developing in front of you because that's the way we write. It's all just pulling it out of the air. Right. So, I'll play something, and then I'll look in and see Jonathan jumping up and down, and I'll be like, all right, we got it. Or they'll be like, man, just change the last note to something. Find the last note, I'll change that, and then before you know it, we have this thing. We're like, whoa, where did this come from? And then, like he was saying, you get to playing it live, and if it's any new song, it's never been played live together the way we record. So that's always fun to finally hear it, as a band, like a full loud live band. But it also has its challenges too, because, we're doing so much in the studio now to try and recreate that live has been a thing with, keys, and because we tour as a trio. So it's just so easy to be a trio, and, less gear and, less people in the van. But when you're doing that much in the studio as we are now, it can be tough live. So that's the whole other challenge, is we might have a song that we're like, oh, this is going to be the one, it's the single, and then we try and rehearse it, and it just does not sound good. We're like, well, I don't know if we can play it on this tour, because some of the stuff's just, we do so much to it on the album, and then trying to pull it off live is like a whole nother challenge we get into. So, but I mean, when it works, it's just incredible to play those new songs and hear them loud and live, and
right,
it's awesome. But
cool.
And we should, and with that, we should also give props to Patrick, our other drummer, who is our live drummer, because what he's done, he's basically learned all of the Matt Putman's drum parts and played those live with us. And, he puts his little spins on it too. But he's, to be able to go out there and replicate Matt Putman is a pretty big feat. And what's great is our new record that's coming out in May, Patrick contributed some drum beats to our new record. So that's pretty awesome. And the wild part about that is, speaking of recording, literally he recorded the drum beat on his iPhone with his iPhone microphone. And then Matt took the iPhone recording, and that's what you hear in the song.
Nice.
As the drum beat. And it sounds insane.
That's
like
awesome.
it's really cool. So it's cool because I feel like now, Matt has been in the band for 20 plus years. So, but Patrick's been in the band. He's a member in the band too. So we've been trying to figure out a way, like, well, how can we have Matt and Patrick contributing? So it was really cool to kind of get a glimpse of this way that a way that we can work that, where Patrick can record something even like on a phone, and then Matt gets it and morphs it into this thing. So it's like they're both working together as drummers on a song. So it's cool how Patrick is coming into the band as not just the live drummer, but he's started to contribute some things too.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that takes a lot of coordination.
For sure.
Yeah, it does seem really complicated, but like Dave was saying, Unwed Sailor is just this thing that we just kind of allow and let happen. Like there's not a lot of we're never in the same room together writing a song. Like we all trust each other's capabilities, and we trust what each other does and plays. So we're able to just like kind of pull the rabbit out of the hat. It's just like there. We know when we reach in there, there's going to be a rabbit. It's never going to be empty. It might surprise us. And I know there's been there's an occasional time where we'll pull the rabbit out and we're like, whoa, like, is that, are sure about that? And then, then you're like, of course, because we're Unwed Sailor. This is what we do. We trust in our influences. We trust in what comes from us.
Exactly.
And then usually that, whatever that thing was, like we listen later and it's like, dude, that is like the coolest thing we've ever done. So yeah, you just trust in yourself.
That's great. I think that's great. And that you trust each other. It's incredible.
Oh, it's crucial. Like
for sure.
You cannot exist without that happening.
Right. Well, and that gives you just the confidence you need to go into any project when you trust
Right.
each other that
Definitely.
well.
Yeah.
And whether it's an EP, whether it's an album, whether it's playing a live show, you trust each other that much.
Yes.
Do you guys in the band? I've listened to a plethora of your stuff, and from EP to album. Do you guys see when you do like a single or an EP, you see those as like bodies of work? I mean, there's some artists that like have a series of EPs, right? And then they put forth, an album. And you guys are very unique in the fact that it's all instrumental. But do you see like doing EPs and singles as a separate body of work versus doing one full body of like an album?
Well, I'm definitely an album guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I honestly I don't know if I would ever be into doing an EP again.
Okay.
I I I'm trying to see. I'm trying to think of the Unwed EPs is like the tour EP, um, which we only did the tour. We created the tour EP out of having something to sell on a tour. Take a Minute is another EP, and that came out of period where between Little Wars, the tour EP, and Take a Minute. So there hadn't been an album for like 10 years.
Mhm.
So that was one of those moments where you're like, okay, well, here's 5 songs, let's get a record out. So I feel like and Firecracker was the first thing.
Mhm.
So it was like, here's these 4 or 5 songs. I'm excited. I want to get at something that whatever this Unwed Sailor thing is, I want to get it out. So anytime there's been an EP, it's been a kind of this like, it's either been like kind of like a necessity or it's been a transition period where you're like, I need to get something out. So, and not, I mean, I'm not trying to demean those releases. I love them, but it's like an album to me is more, it's like you're eating a full meal, you're not, these aren't snacks. Uh, so I'm an album guy. And I always will be, because putting that together, like the sequencing and that to me, that's just the true art form for music to be presented.
Right.
And as far as singles go, if you're referring to singles from albums, that's just a current necessity in the music world to promote the album. You pick the 3 songs that you think people will connect to the most, or you pick the songs you think will piss the most people off, to get more attention, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's how I see singles. I don't think I would ever just be into just releasing a single as a one-off song. Well, actually, I think the only time we're going to do that up to this point is for this new record. We took 2 songs off the album to make the album more streamlined, and we're going to release those 2 songs separately after the album comes out as standalone B-sides.
Mm.
So those will be released as standalone songs, but they were written and put together as an album,
Cool.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I get what you're saying too about being an album guy, and just it's almost like you're releasing the statement, when you do the album and you're releasing like a full body, a complete thing versus EP. There's certain artists that do like series of Iron and Wine has done like, like many EPs and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I can see that, some artists, they're trying to say something specifically like this project, and it's a tiny thing. But when releasing the full album, I think you're like releasing the full statement. So I totally agree with what you're saying there.
And if we were living in the 80s right now or early 90s, I might feel differently about the EP and the single, because back then an EP still really meant something,
Mm-hmm.
and a single really meant something. Like you look at the Smiths in New Order, they released a single with the B-sides, and sometimes the B-sides are going to be the timeless songs that everyone pays more attention to than the A-side. And then, or like an EP, you know, they just had, I feel like in the 80s and the 90s, EPs and singles just had more of a punch. There's just something more there, and excitement. Like you go buy the New Order single. You know, and today I feel like it just doesn't, there's not that kind of like excitement.
Right.
You know, I mean, if you know, if you release a single, people are going to forget about it by the next week.
Yeah, you don't
know,
have the
there's something
tangible singles anymore. It's like
right.
there's one to put in our notes, tangible singles. But
Yeah.
but yeah, like back then you would literally buy like a single or like a 10-inch or 12-inch single, and you know the B-side might be a song and then a bunch of remixes or something, or and people would actually purchase that. Now I feel like you just put it out on Apple Music or whatever, and it just gets shoved under a bunch of other songs or something. You know, I don't know. It's just not the same as it used to be.
No, it isn't. Not at
Yeah,
all.
maybe, you know, maybe that digital single get put on a playlist or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, then you're just kind of lost in this playlist world or something. So yeah, you know, I feel like actually being an album guy in the current state of the world is definitely not where you should be as a musician. I feel like, or as a band, I mean, you know, I feel like you kind of have to be in the single world in this modern era, but I just can't. Like, I'm an album guy.
Right.
That's just who I am. So I can't
Yeah, same here.
can't be anything else.
Yeah,
you know?
I grew up listening to full records like it was a thing. You know, you buy the CD or
Right.
or the vinyl, and it's like a whole thing. And you know, you listen to it all
Sure.
the way through over and over again. It's like, I don't know. I guess maybe same way with us when we were younger with like mixtapes and mixed CDs. Maybe like I guess playlists are now the thing. So that's why a lot of people like singles. But still, I mean, it's like the full record, the full statement for me
Sure.
is just so much better.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a body of work. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
get the whole thing, get the whole
Right.
picture for sure.
And even in the band on tour, like when we put in a record, we listen to that whole record.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
there's no skipping, we don't stop. Even that, Dave, you have to help me, but even the Grateful Dead album that we've listened to where there's a song
Oh yeah.
that somebody else wrote in the band that Dave hates
Yeah.
the song so much, but we still listen to that song.
Yeah, it's the
Like-
the 80s stuff with the keyboard player.
Touch of Grey?
Well, that record, which is actually a really good record, but everything their keyboard player up to that point sings is I just can't stand his voice. But we still listen to it through. There's some great songs.
We listen to it.
Yeah.
We're an
Midland.
album band.
Brent Midland's his name. He's the
Brett Midland.
80s
Wow.
80s keyboard player of Grateful Dead, but his voice is just so bad.
Grateful Dead trivia? I did not know.
Yeah.
I did not know I was going to learn today.
I got to play a Jerry Garcia style solo on the new Unwed record. I'm pretty proud of.
Ooh.
Probably the
The
first.
one that's coming out in May.
Yeah, the one that's comes out next year, or this year now. Actually, it's January.
Wow.
But yeah, I was proud of that.
So this new record, this is already finished. This is already produced.
It's done. It's getting
done.
manufactured right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It'll first single comes out in March, second single in April, and then full album comes out in May.
Fantastic.
So, how long has this process been going where you guys are putting out an album a year? Or, you know,
Because Dave talked to us about that a little bit, about like you have a plan. Like it's going to be this, we play, we record, and so forth.
Yeah. Well, since 2019, and what sparked it is we were on tour in Seattle, and Dave Bizon from Pedro the Lion, he's tried and true. If he's not on tour, he's going to be at the Unwed Sailor show in Seattle. So we always see him there, and I don't know. I guess it was 2018 or I can't remember when it was. I was talking to Dave, and he just threw out the idea of releasing an album a year. And that really resonated with me. It was just a challenge, and um, I just kind of thought, well, this is what I do. I play music. Why am I not releasing an album a year? Like, can we even do that? So I was just like, well, let's just do it. So since Heavy Age in 19, we've done an album a year. Uh, so now, yeah, it's just like this cycle. Like the songs that I mentioned earlier that I was really lazy to go record on the computer, that's the record after the one coming out in May.
Mm.
So so once the new record, the one coming out in May, goes off to vinyl, is mastered and then goes off to get manufactured on vinyl, then there's like a spot in my brain that is cleared out, and then I can start putting those next album songs in there and
Nice.
start that process. Um, so right now I'm just demoing the next album, and we're putting it in a Dropbox, and I'll send it to Matt and send it to Dave to kind of get the wheels turning. And then probably in, I don't know, early summer maybe, uh, Matt will go in and track drums, and then probably mid late summer, Dave will go in and do guitar, and then about a month later we'll mix, and then about a month later we'll master, and then yeah, it's kind of like it's like a factory,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yes.
time to put the bread in the oven, time to chop the onions,
Yeah.
time to,
It's a well-oiled
it's like,
machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's so, I mean, so far it's worked great. I'm really happy with every record that comes out. I don't feel like there's anything that's weak. Uh, like all the songs feel great. I still like them. Um, I don't feel, what I mean is, like, I don't feel like we're putting any filler out there. Like all these albums really mean something. Like
Yeah.
they're quality pieces of music.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, you can feel it from album to album as well. And I can see a progression
Cool.
from album to album.
Yeah, it's fun because, like, like I was saying, like the little surprises we get, it's fun to see what this next album's going to sound like.
Right.
And there's like little, like the new songs I'm writing. It's funny because the next album, my initial thought was, oh, I think this is going to be like a really like slow, sad kind of record. And now once I'm like demoing this stuff, I'm like, no, it's not that at all, actually. There may be a couple of the songs are, but it's it's like kind of a variety. But I am noticing the songs are longer on on this one. And I feel like the songs on the new one coming out are actually kind of shorter. So I don't know. They're doing whatever they do. These albums kind of just do what they do.
It's cool. You just find them as you get them.
Yeah,
For sure.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Chase them till they make sense. So the record will be the spring, right? That's when this is coming
Mhm.
out.
Yep.
Yep.
What about shows? Any shows you guys are planning for 25?
There's we have nothing planned yet,
Mhm.
but I'm working on stuff. I've reached out to a couple bands about going out on tour with them, and sent the record to our booking agent, to get that going. To get ideas flowing. So the plan would be, go out the spring, like after the early summer, after the record comes out.
Mhm.
Um, Usually what we like to do is hit East Coast, West Coast, Midwest each year. Uh, that's always the goal. So yeah, just try to hit as many cities as we can and play the songs,
Right.
and then start on the next record.
Yep. Just like the program says.
Yeah.
Record here, record there.
Right, the factory.
That's the
Yeah.
factory.
What is it? Clocking in at the factory.
Yes. Exactly what we're doing. Well, we really appreciate you guys' time. Jonathan, David, thank you so much for speaking with us
Thank y'all.
today. And
Yeah.
we really look
Thanks.
forward to
Thank
what's
you.
coming out in 25.
Yeah. I can't wait to get it out there. It's on its way.
It's on its way.
Awesome.
We're
Thank
ready.
you guys.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Jonathan.